So today I want to talk about Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's response to the price gouging from Texas electric companies towards their customers in response to the winter storms. Now, if you're not familiar with the price gouging situation I'm talking about, essentially after the winter storms hit Texas and knocked out their power grid, some people within that power grid actually maintained and had power through most of the storm. A subset of the people who did ended up getting massive electric bills. These electric bills were in the thousands of dollar range. And people basically woke up to these bills the next day after surviving through this storm, and some of them probably counted themselves among the lucky. Some of them probably took in neighbors, and they wake up to this exorbitant bill that they're not sure they can pay. And that must be a terrifying place to find oneself. So given that, what was the response from the Texas Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, to the plight of people in this case? Well, it was twofold. The first was to blame people. It was actually to blame people for what actually occurred. And the second response was to start backpedaling and start to talk about regulating some of the free market. And honestly, I think the first is to speak against the second and to cover up the fact that the regulation is going to occur in the first place by blaming the population who fell victim to it, as opposed to the actual issues of the free market. So with that said, let's take a look at some of his actual words. So basically, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick had said that Texans faced with the huge electricity bills, quote, gambled in the hope of a cheap deal and ended up losing. So this hope of a cheap deal caused them to lose. He suggested that those in trouble would likely get help, but said in the future, customers should really, quote, read the fine print of such deals. Now, the issue is, as I pointed out, that some people received bills, like this one Army veteran, that were in the $16,000 range. This is terrifying and scary and should not be the case at all. And the reason for this is because when you are in a storm and the supply becomes limited, the demand does not change at all. You still require electricity. Electricity is one of those things that has become an absolute necessity, especially for heating during a storm. In Texas, especially, the way they have their system set up. So basically, you will pay any amount to stay alive. And because of that, they can charge an exorbitant rate based on market value. And that is generally speaking how that type of demand and supply work. And that's usually in instances of inelastic demand that are basically essentials to life. That will pretty much be the case in those type of economic situations. So even, economics covers the fact that this will happen and talks about how the market will probably fail in these instances. So with that said, the customers faced with huge bills had signed up with the power company on a model of wholesale cost, as opposed to one of fixed pricing. Essentially, those two make all the difference for things. But while the lieutenant governor blames this on the people, I actively believe that it's the companies and the lack of regulation that are to blame for this. So what this means is that the wholesale cost model generally provides cheaper prices during times where the supply is maximized. You are basically leaving yourself up to a free, full market situation. And again, that generally will mean the price will be lower. And by doing that, you end up creating a system where people are going to want that. The fixed price, on the other hand, is a slightly higher price, but in the situation of a storm or something like this, you'll end up getting a fixed rate. So people who had the fixed rate contract ended up getting the same price throughout. Now, here's my issue with this. When you have a bunch of electric companies competing with each other, they are all going to try to get their customers to come in through the door. That is the main focus. you are competing against other organizations, which means that you're trying to drive prices down in a capitalist system where you're competing against each other. That is the nature of the laissez-faire free market, right? Like, that is what you're trying to do. In doing that, what you're going to do is, as a company, you're going to cut costs, which means you're not going to winterize your equipment. Because if you winterize your equipment and the other company doesn't, then your prices are going to be higher and nobody's going to buy from you. You are going to be incentivized to try to not include areas that are far away from your local hub, because that will drive up the delivery rate of the electricity. And some of your closer customers will end up paying the back end of other customers. It ends up creating poorer infrastructure and less monitoring and observing of the electric grid, because you're trying to cut costs to drive things down for the consumer. Furthermore, when you sign people up, you are going to try to tell them about the lowest price you have available, because you want to undercut the competition and their lowest price. And that means the companies themselves have an incentive to sell the wholesale cost model, not necessarily advertising the fixed rate model, even though the fixed rate model might give them more money in the short term. The wholesale cost will get them more customers, which might increase their profit in the long term. And that's something that they'll probably gamble on. So if you're only offering the wholesale model, or you're offering that as the cheaper rate, and that's the incentive you're using to to get customers to buy into your model in the first place, then is it really the people to blame? Or is it the companies and the lack of regulation and the allowance for a wholesale cost to exist in a utility that has an inelastic demand? That strikes me as the responsibility of the state to regulate that. That's kind of the function and purpose of what a government should be doing, or the companies themselves to not allow for that. But of course, with the free market, they're all going to be incentivized to do it, because if one does it, they all have to do it in order to compete with the other companies. And that's why regulation in these type of things is really important. Because this is what happens. People's lives come under fire. Now, again, I don't think it's on the people. And the fact that the governor is blaming the people, I think, is an attempt to backpedal away from what he's actively admitting in all of this, which is that the free market failed. Because, as he mentioned in the interview, I've told folks not to panic. We're going to figure that out. But going forward, people need to read the fine print in those kind of bills. And we may even end that type of variable plan because people were surprised. I wonder why people were surprised. And let's not forget, one thing I forgot to mention is that if you're poorer, and that if you're in a worse off economic situation, chances are you're trying to cut costs anywhere, and you're probably the population that is going to end up taking the lower model anyway, and isn't going to have the time, the energy, and the details available to possibly even know that the fixed rate is something different and something you should explore. So basically, he is talking about here actively regulating the market and removing the ability to have a fluctuating price. Furthermore, he has disconnected the ability for utilities to shut down and disconnect for non-payment until they can come up with a solution. So basically, what you have here is someone who has been a proponent of the free market and laissez-faire systems backpedaling after blaming a bunch of people in his own constituents and saying, no, we might actively have to regulate this. And to be perfectly honest, he's not the only one. Ted Cruz has backpedaled also and basically said that they need tighter regulations on the energy market in Texas. This has woken a few people up. And I think this is being used to hide the fact, the blaming of people, I should say, is being used to hide the fact that this was an institutional problem. The free market failed in this case, and it will fail whenever the demand is like this. It'll happen in things like electricity and healthcare and education and food and anything that is a demand and need of life. As we move forward, this is going to happen with water. This is going to happen with the internet as it's required more and more in the society. And we need to address that concern ahead of time. The free market, even if you are a capitalist, even if you fully appreciate the way capitalism works, you have to question whether or not these particular models should be unregulated. Now, me personally, I think they should be fully brought in as public utilities, and they should be regulated by the people in some sort of democratic fashion, which would address this issue. But I don't think that's the direction that Texas will go. And I think they'll do just as much regulation to make sure that they cover themselves and that people don't really get frustrated. And they'll probably find ways to either exempt people or pay the bills off through state funding, which is funny to me because, again, they are the ones who don't want to usually bail people out. But they're going to have to in this case, because the system really did crash and burn and fail that bad, and people are struggling with that. So, with that said, we need to come up with better models, and certainly in these cases where inelastic demand is a thing, where life is required, we absolutely need, to not allow the free market to to have its laissez-faire way and to just be unregulated and run itself, because it will always lead to people dying and suffering in these cases. So with that said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and bell for notification. You can follow me on Twitter and check out my Discord in the description down below. My name is Anarchist Tara, and I hope you enjoyed watching.